Are you tired of hearing the same old spiel about VR every time the topic comes up? It's always the same. Half-Life, Alyx, as if nothing else exists. Sure, I agree it's the gold standard for VR experiences, but frankly, I'm tired of talking and hearing about it. Since its release, many great games have come out. Some are better in certain aspects, others worse, and some are on a similar level. But to say any of them can stand shoulder to shoulder with the gold standard? Not quite. After fully completing Batman, Arkham Shadow, I made a bold claim. Many might disagree and throw virtual tomatoes at me, but here it is. This isn't just a game where you can draw parallels with Half-Life, Alyx. For me personally, it's better. In this video, I'll share what I loved and didn't love about Batman, Arkham Shadow, highlight its unique features, and offer tips to enhance your experience. One of my favourite videos on this channel was What's Wrong with Virtual Reality. In it, I argued that VR has everything except strong story-driven games. And no one has really challenged me on that because, well, it's true. It's hard to claim that even one game in the Half-Life series has a truly remarkable story. Half-Life, Alyx least of all. Valve delivered a flashy, unforgettable spectacle. Alyx, especially early on, overwhelms players with emotions. First, awe at the advanced graphics, then amazement at the super interactive and responsive VR world. But by about halfway through, the wow effect fades, occasionally spiced up by the appearance of interesting enemies. Under the hood, Alyx is a standard VR showcase designed to flaunt cool features. Batman. Arkham Shadow, however, doesn't immediately throw you into the spectacle. Beyond the main menu, you're greeted with autonomous yet unimpressive graphics and a barely interactive room. Because of this, my initial impression was skepticism. I thought the whole game might be like that. But Batman. Arkham Shadow begins to shine at the end of its introduction. That's when the long-awaited spectacle starts. The developers constantly served up a mix of incredible combat, decent detective work, moderate platforming, breathtaking cutscenes, and engaging dialogue with characters. Of course, expecting an outstanding narrative like The Last of Us or Mass Effect from Batman would be naive. Batman games are action-packed adventures about a cool guy in latex chasing bad guys. But I will say that, in terms of story, this might be the best thing to happen to VR. I was hooked till the very end. The storytelling is brilliantly structured, creating a delightful sense of anticipation. You're driven forward by the question, who is the main antagonist and where is he hiding? The core theme here is classic Batman. Gotham is in danger and something must be done. This time the city is threatened by a mysterious Rat King. Throughout the game, Batman pulls clues from various people to track him down. Maybe for hardcore fans of the universe, the plot twists were obvious, and they immediately figured out who was good and who was bad. But I only vaguely remembered a few main characters. And even if you're entirely new to the universe, don't worry, you'll still enjoy it. As the story progresses, we learn more about key characters and even the protagonist himself. When Batman sleeps, he dreams of his classic backstory. These flashbacks help you understand why he became a superhero. By the end, it all ties together, and you'll see why the flashbacks were shown. I think the developers teased a sequel at the end. What do you think? For those who've played, share your thoughts in the comments. And for those who haven't yet, I highly recommend diving into the full story. The game was created by Camouflage Studio. If you search for it, you'll find just 2 titles in their portfolio, Republic and Iron Man VR. Such a modest list of projects might raise some concerns. The studio was founded by game producer, director and writer Ryan Payton, who previously worked at 2 renowned studios, Kojima Productions and 343 Industries. He joined Kojima's team during the development of Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater, and, according to available information, served as an assistant producer. Later, he rose to the role of producer for Metal Gear Solid, Portable Ops. As his role expanded, Payton contributed to nearly every aspect of Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots, including location scouting, script writing, gameplay design, sound, marketing, and bug testing. An impressive experience. However, life took him from Kojima to 343 Industries, where he participated in the development of Halo 4 as a narrative designer. His time there was brief, as he soon founded his own studio, Camouflage. The newly established studio began with a flat-screen game, Republique, a mediocre project that failed to make waves. We won't dwell on it. Later they created a VR version, but it didn't perform much better. In 2020, Camouflage released Iron Man VR, exclusively for PlayStation VR. The game received mixed reviews. Critics unanimously praised the immersive experience of being Tony Stark, but criticised long load times, performance issues, and clunky controls on PS Move. 2 years later, the studio was acquired by Meta. The game was released on the Quest platform, where it proved less demanding and received a warmer reception. Some players even called it a AAA title. Iron Man VR showcased Camouflage's talent for creating immersive experiences that make you feel like the hero rather than a mere resemblance. However, they seemed to lack the time or expertise to refine the technical aspects. Clearly, Meta assigned them the task of creating a stellar Batman game right after the acquisition. According to interviews, the development lasted about 4 years and was tailored for Quest 2. To emphasize their commitment to this Batman project, Camouflage brought in several team members from Rocksteady Studios, the creators of the original Arkham series. The team drew inspiration from Half-Life, Alyx, striving for seamless transitions between cutscenes and gameplay, and they succeeded. For the combat system, they meticulously studied player feedback from Iron Man VR. Their goal was to make combat dynamic while ensuring players didn't feel exhausted after just 5 minutes. Their main inspirations for the combat system were Beat Saber and Superhot. The soundtrack, as with Iron Man VR, was entrusted to Kazumi Totaka. His music can be heard in the Metal Gear Solid series, the recent Star Wars Outlaws, and the film Detective Pikachu. The soundtrack in Batman, Arkham Shadow, turned out to be excellent and greatly enhances the immersion. It's unknown how much money was spent on the game's development, but it's clear it wasn't cheap. Just look at the cast list. Batman is voiced by Roger Craig Smith, known as the voice of Ezio Auditore and Chris Redfield. The Joker is voiced by Troy Baker. You probably know him as Joel from The Last of Us. Elijah Wood also plays a role as Dr. Crane. The voice acting is simply outstanding, especially in the finale when the masks come off and the climax begins. It's absolutely spine-chilling. I'm sharing this to help you understand how many people were involved in the process, and that Batman, Arkham Shadow is not just a marketing gimmick, but a true AAA game. Some journalists criticised the combat system, with a few even claiming it was scripted. From videos, it might seem like Batman moves automatically from one enemy to another, with everything done by pressing a single button. That's false. There are no scripts. Believe me, after a day of playing, you'll feel like you've had a boxing workout. The combat system feels more like rhythmic training. You need to be precise in where and how you move. The combat doesn't get boring over time. It's reminiscent of the fights from the flat-screen Batman games. The developers clearly drew inspiration from the original Arkham series. Their challenge was to integrate those movements into player interactions, and Camouflage succeeded. However, the stealth takedowns were a bit disappointing. They're cool but feel somewhat unfinished. What impressed me most about Batman was the perfect balance of story, combat, detective work, and puzzles. For instance, let's take last year's God of War, Ragnarok. It thrived on grandeur. Look how huge and mighty these gods are. Sure, it worked. The cutscenes were epic. But the gameplay leaned too heavily on puzzles and aimless wandering. Batman. Arkham Shadow doesn't have such issues. There's no looting, thankfully, because I hate it. Batman keeps you engaged with its dynamic gameplay and short, unobtrusive puzzles. Everything is designed to maintain the action-packed momentum. Besides fighting, Bruce conducts investigations, which even include dialogue options, where you can test your deduction skills. This cycle of detective work, combat, story, puzzle flows seamlessly, making time fly by. Character controls are phenomenal. All skills and equipment are instantly accessible without any ability wheels or unnecessary UI. Need a batarang? Just pull it from your chest. A smoke bomb? It's ready on your wrist in seconds. Though, honestly, I never used it. My two favourite mechanics are stunning enemies with the cape and gliding from point A to point B using the cape. You can complete Batman Arkham Shadow in about 8 hours. Most of my time was spent clearing areas patrolled by armed enemies. In hand-to-hand combat, it doesn't matter how many enemies attack Batman, even 100 at once. But firearms are a completely different story. The Batsuit offers little protection, so charging head-on isn't an option. It's hard for me to highlight all the unique features of Batman Arkham Shadow since I'm not deeply familiar with the Batman universe. However, several English-language YouTube videos are already analysing NPC dialogues in detail. For example, in one scene, 4 men discuss a prison escape plan. This mini-dialogue evolves with the story. On the first day, they're just talking about how we should get out, while by the 4th day, one of them pulls out cell blueprints and points to blind spots. On the 5th day, you learn the outcome. By the way, your dialogues with key characters don't affect the storyline but create an illusion of choice. There's only one ending in the game. A fun detail, Batman has incredibly flexible fingers, sometimes a bit too much. You can look at yourself in the mirror, and after fights you'll see cuts and bruises on your face. You can easily learn about the current situation in Gotham from newspapers and the TV. For example, in the dining hall, there's a TV showing city news and interviews with Gordon. Newspapers report that Batman is considered a murderer following the events of the prologue. On one of the newspapers, I even found a reference to Meta's upcoming mixed reality headset. Another neat feature, you can find a payphone in the game and call the number for good time. If you do, the Joker will answer the call. If you've found more interesting details, share them in the comments. Now, for the downsides. The biggest issue is that the game occasionally lags severely. On Quest 3, I recorded gameplay which increased the load, but even without recording, the game sometimes froze. For example, scripts would break, making it impossible to interact with NPCs. Occasionally, a prompt like "press the stick" would get stuck on the screen, forcing me to reload the last save. These bugs urgently need fixing. Another critique is the unimpressive beginning. Maybe it's just my opinion, but a game should grab you right away, like Half-Life, Alyx, which delivers a wow effect within the first few minutes. The world's interactivity in Batman Arkham Shadow is relatively low. There are few objects you can interact with. For example, in Alyx you can turn on a washing machine and do countless other small things. In Batman, the world feels more sterile. Another disappointment is the lack of collision. Your hand passes through characters. In VR, this is a letdown. Weak and forgettable bosses are another downside. But for me personally, this wasn't a deal breaker since I really enjoyed the game overall. Visually, Batman Arkham Shadow looks stunning for a standalone VR game. If you compare it to PC VR, the difference is noticeable, but that's just how it is. Be sure to use Quest Games Optimizer to improve the graphics without sacrificing performance. Ideally, I'd love to see the game with enhanced graphics on PC, but for now that's just a dream. Despite the drawbacks, Batman Arkham Shadow became a game I liked more than Half-Life, Alyx. It plays seamlessly, and you never feel like the developers artificially stretched out the experience. After finishing it, you're left with a very pleasant aftertaste. That feeling you get after completing an excellent game. This is just my opinion, and you're entirely free to disagree. I'm looking forward to your feedback in the comments. That's all for now. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and see you in the future.